Hello everybody, welcome to the channel, Cassidy the Aspiring Author. I'm Cassidy. If you're new here, welcome. It's really nice to meet you, and if you're returning, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. So for this video, as you can tell by the title, we'll be talking about Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. It is a murder mystery. It's my first book that I've read by her, and it's so good. If anybody is interested, this is the bookmark I was using while reading it. It's Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen. And it's metal, got it at Phoenix Fan Fusion. I've gotten a lot of bookmarks from this person, whoever made it. And again, I'm so sorry, I don't remember who, but they're all amazing, really good quality. And as always, we'll be reading from this notebook to refer back to my notes. So if you see me look down or off to the side, I apologize. I'm just referring back to what I said about the book. It's been a minute. As usual for my videos, I'll be doing a full summary and review of the book. So if you haven't read it and you would really like to, without any spoilers, please click off the video, go read the book, and then once you have read it, click back on and tell me what you thought. If your ending theories and thoughts were the same as mine, if they were different, just let me know what you thought. If that doesn't matter to you, you're good with spoilers, stay on. Or if you just want to hear the story, please stay on. Let me know what you think at the end. Alright, so let's get started. Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. 8 strangers, 1 killer, nowhere to run. When Christa joins a tour group heading deep into the Rocky Mountains, she's hopeful this will be her chance to put the ghosts of her past to rest. But when a bitterly cold snowstorm sweeps the region, the small group is forced to take shelter in an abandoned hunting cabin. Despite the uncomfortably claustrophobic quarters and rapidly dropping temperature, Christa believes they'll be safe as they wait out the storm. She couldn't be more wrong. Deep in the night, their tour guide goes missing, only to be discovered the following morning, his severed head impaled on a tree outside the cabin. Terrified and completely isolated by the storm, Christa finds herself trapped with 8 total strangers. One of them kills for sport, and they're far from finished. As the storm grows more dangerous and the number of survivors dwindles one by one, Christa must decide whom she can trust before this frozen mountain becomes her tomb. First questions and impressions I have after reading the back is it her? I literally trust nobody in a murder mystery, not a single person, so I instantly think it could very well be Christa herself who is killing everybody. Could it be one of the ghosts from her past? It didn't seem like a supernatural thriller, so obviously a person, but one of the ghosts from the past, and just what happened in the past. We get to find out, is that going to play a big part in this book or not? So let's get started with the actual book. So it starts with Christa and Kiernan, who are struggling their way through a snowstorm. Christa's obviously not used to this kind of weather. She keeps falling down, she keeps just suffering, and she's very, very cold. Her clothes, while warm, were not prepared for this kind of weather. Kiernan, however, way better prepared for this kind of thing. He refuses to leave Christa. He keeps going back for her, keeps helping her up. He gives her his scarf because it's more heavy duty. And then they're ending up walking next to, I think, rock formations. And Christa falls off a cliff. It's just white, basically. And they can't see anything. They can't see where the cliffs are, where the drop-offs are. And so Christa takes a step thinking that it's more snow and more ground. And it's not. So she falls. Kiernan tries to help her. He grabs her wrist and but he can't hold his grip. Krista's glove comes off and she has scratch marks on her hand. And she just falls down the cliff. She wakes up in covered in snow. She makes her way up out of the snow, thankfully. And she just stumbles. She wants to try to find safety. She wants to live. So she stumbles, and then she finally hears a whistle. And she sees people. So she makes her way over to them. Now we go to 6 hours beforehand, before all this chaos, and Christa losing Kiernan, no glove, struggling in snow. Christa and Kiernan are on a bus with 8 strangers, 9 if you include the tour bus, or the tour guide bus driver, Brian. And they're on their way to a little snow vacation up at a lodge. While they're driving, they come across a giant tree in the road. So Brian gets out all the tools. He asks for volunteers to help chop up the tree and move it off to the side. While doing this, Christa and Kiernan kind of wander off. They say they want to explore. Oh, also, Christa fully believes that Kiernan is about to propose to her. They haven't been dating that long, only like a couple of months. Like, definitely should not be engaged quite yet, in my opinion. But she seems very ecstatic about it, like very excited. Like, you can tell that she's more of a shy and quiet personality, but she really likes him. And we know that if he does propose, which is just her feeling, that she'll say yes. Now we're back to present day, where after Christa struggled through the snowstorm and she finds the people and the building, someone is wrapping up her hand. She's like conscious, but only semi-conscious. So she overhears somebody, she's not entirely sure who, but she overhears somebody saying that her hand has frostbite and it needs to be amputated. They don't amputate it, they just wrap it up, but it's scary. So now Christa is fully conscious, realizes Kiernan is not there with them, and she's desperate to find him. She wants to so badly. She leaves the cabin, but it's getting dark, and the snowstorm is still raging. Like, it's intense. There are 5 people total who help her look, but they can't look for that long or that far because of the snowstorm, and just there's no light, there's no visibility. There's like a giant tree that they use as like a landmarker for being close to this little cabin, but even then they can barely see it. So they have to stop and go back to the cabin where they're taking refuge from the snowstorm. The cabin is super small. It seems like they're all in one room. I don't know if there's not a bedroom in the cabin or not, or what. But it seems like it's just the living room and like the kitchen. There's not even a bathroom, so when they do have to use the restroom, they go outside to pee. Once they're all back, everybody introduces themselves. So there's Brian, the tour guide. There is Steve, who is just this whole time being an asshole and saying that there's no way Kiernan could be alive, which that is what everyone's thinking. They're very resistant to help her just because they don't think that he could be alive. Christa believes otherwise because he was far better prepared for this kind of weather. But Steve is the most vocal about Kiernan not being alive anymore, and he's just not nice while saying it. Anyway, so Steve is a trucker, and there's his wife, Miri. And then there is Hutch. He is very extroverted. He is a DJ who is scouting out the lodge location as a wedding venue. Then Blake, she is a retired 911 dispatcher. Simone, she is more like... she's very severe looking, like doesn't smile, very stone-faced. She was also the one who wrapped up Krista's hand. She does not say what she does. And then Alexis, Christa has a bad feeling about her. She like doesn't look anyone in the eye. She's very skittish. She's always like looking down at her journal. She also does not say what she does or why she's there. And then there's Denny, who is a mechanic, and his son, Grayson. Suddenly, Christa gets this really bad feeling where she feels that not a single one of them will survive this trip at this cabin in the woods. And the feeling is strong, like stronger than any other feeling she's ever had, even the one that she had on August 8th, which we're assuming is the like ghost from her past event thing that happened, but we're not entirely sure yet. This feeling, she can't shake it. She's sure. She wants to be wrong, but she is sure that no one is going to leave alive. So, they're in the cabin. No one can sleep comfortably. Again, there's no bathroom, so when they have to pee in the middle of the night, they just get up and go. And then the next morning, we see that Brian is gone. No one was paying attention, so no one knew how long he had been gone for. Christa is secretly kind of excited that he's gone. Like, she doesn't want anything to happen to him, but if he's not here, then that means everyone's going to be far more willing to help her look. And if they look for Brian, they'll have to look for Kiernan as well, because that's just, I mean, they're looking for people. Christa and Miri find Brian's head impaled on a tree. I think it's that big tree, but it's impaled on a tree. Miri screams. Krista's shocked. She's trying to like look at everyone's reactions and see how they respond to seeing his head up there and no body. Yeah, there's no body. Well, she's trying to decipher everyone's faces and body language. Everyone is just shocked. They're all trying to believe and think that it's outsiders somehow, that it wasn't actually one of them. Part of the group, when searching for Brian, had found a shed earlier, so now they decide to search it, hoping to find outsiders. That would be an easy explanation for everything that had happened. But they find nobody. Simone states that they need to just stay at the cabin, wait for help. Brian had stated that day before, when he was still alive, that he had called for help, so rescue was coming. Simone said that they just needed to wait for it. Christa has not given up on Kiernan yet, and she convinces Simone to let her look for Kiernan still. She does it on her own, ends up looking for 4 hours, but unfortunately doesn't find anything. She does have red string that she ties along trees along the way so that she doesn't lose her sense of direction, because it's really easy to do so in a snowstorm as bad as the one that they're experiencing. So after she gives up looking for Kiernan, she goes back, leaving the red string up, hoping that Kiernan will somehow see it and he can make his way to them. When she makes it back to the cabin, Grayson, who is the teenager, Denny, the mechanic's son, is fighting Hutch, who is the DJ. They're physically fighting. Christa, having been gone for 4 hours, has no idea what's going on. She makes her way over to Alexis, who, while Christa doesn't trust completely, Alexis is the least intimidating. She asks what's going on. Alexis isn't fully sure, but she thinks that Hutch made a bad joke that just set Grayson off. Also, Blake, she's the retired 911 dispatcher. She is a problem. She keeps making these off-colored jokes, really not appropriate for anything, but she keeps doing it about just everything. And she's so excited about the fighting. Her eyes are glowing and she's so excited. She's an issue. We also realize that Steve is probably an alcoholic. Krista's dad was one, so she can kind of see the signs, and Steve is getting really agitated. Was probably banking on being at the lodge, having some booze, but nothing. We don't know for sure if he is or is not, but that's what we're assuming. Then someone, I can't remember who, I feel like it was Simone, finds the radio that Brian supposedly had called help for, but it's broken. Had been broken. Not someone had just broken it, but it was definitely broken. And they realized that Brian had lied. Probably to keep everybody calm. He figured that he could get them all out of there the next day himself, but no help was coming. Because no help's coming, they decide to go help themselves. They make their way back to the bus so that they can just drive their way out of here. They'll just push through the snowstorm. When they get there, the bus is broken. Fully, completely. Someone took apart the engine and not just took the pieces out and put them on the ground. Because Denny, the mechanic, could have fixed that, but smashed them, dented them in ways that Denny can't fix. So they decide to just take their luggage and some food and make their way back to the cabin. While there, Christa spots teeth marks on the windowsill outside of the cabin. There's 31 teeth, which is the exact number of teeth Kiernan had. He was missing one, I think, of his molars or something, and there is a molar missing. So Christa has lost all hope. She knows that they're Kiernan's teeth, and that someone just, it's gross. But she has no more hope that Kiernan is alive. Now we find out that Simone is actually ex-military, and she recommends that everyone sleep in shifts so that they can keep track of who comes and who goes. And they can make sure, not two people go to the restroom at the same time. No one's gone for too long. So Blake is taking the first shift because she says that she's used to the midnight shift anyway. And Hutch as well is taking the shift. So the 911 dispatcher and the DJ. They both end up falling asleep. And then really early in the morning, we hear Steve screaming, "Where is she? She's gone. Where is she? Miri is gone." They go outside and they see her head and body are not attached anymore. Head is on the tree, body's on the ground. Steve is wailing, he's mourning. But Simone goes up to Christa and she says, "Don't you think that's a little performative?" So Simone does not believe Steve and his grieving process. And also no one trusts anyone because they all know that there's a killer out there. And while they all want to believe it's an outsider, it's looking more and more like it's one of them. So because of that, they search everyone's things, go through their pockets, their clothes that they're wearing, their luggage. Nothing is really of note. There's little pocket knives and stuff, but nothing that could have taken off someone's head. Simone decides then, because there's no other option, she's going to walk to town. So Simone is walking to town. She doesn't really care if others come with her, but 3 join her. Christa herself, Denny the mechanic, and Hutch the DJ. The ones who stay behind are Grayson, who is Denny's son, Blake, Steve, and Alexis. The ones who stayed behind are actually the ones that I suspect of being the killer. Blake is just a problem. Steve is an asshole. And Alexis gives weird vibes. Grayson had that fight with Hutch where he like blew up, but he's also a teenager, so I don't fully suspect him, but the other 3 are definitely the ones that I suspect of being the killer. So that is super interesting. I feel like that they decide to stay behind. While searching, they find Kiernan's body. It's wearing his clothes, everything. Christa mourns because she had no hope already, but now she has proof that he's dead. And so she mourns, she's clinging to the body, and she finds an engagement ring. So she was right, her hunch was right, and he was going to propose to her. So she takes the engagement ring, and they keep walking. Instantly, when we see the body and no head, I'm suspicious. I trust nothing. I am never more suspicious in my entire life than reading a mystery. But we had found Brian's head and not his body, and now we have Kiernan's body and not his head. So, to me, I'm like, suspicious. Anyway, I digress. Christa is fully convinced that it was Kiernan. He had like defensive wounds on his hands, so they were barely recognizable. And it was his clothes, his engagement ring, all of that. So Christa is convinced that it's Kiernan. I am not, however. They walk in circles for a couple hours and make no progress, so they just decide to go back to the cabin. When they are back, we see that Steve has found some alcohol, which is really, really disappointing. Alexis pulls Christa aside. She tells her that Grayson came to her and he said that he suspects his father of killing his mother. The car that she had drove one morning, like the brakes had failed and she crashed and died. However, that was the car that Denny had like meticulously maintained. It was his car. But that morning, he had an excuse that that car didn't have enough space and so he needed to use the other car, so the mom had driven this car. It was deemed an accident, but Grayson is really suspicious of his dad. He doesn't give a reason why he's suspicious, like if there were problems in the marriage or anything, but just that he was suspicious. While walking around, Christa finds Blake. She's smoking and she's alone, and then she goes into the shed and finds an axe with what looks like dried blood on it. She can't be too sure though. Grayson comes in. Not Grayson. So Denny comes in to the shed as well, sees the axe and says that's probably just Teresa. Christa finds that really unlikely, and even more so that it's coming from Denny. When everyone's back to the cabin, everyone is there aside from Grayson. Denny is not really that concerned about it. He says that his son just goes for walks. Sometimes you can't find him. But they end up searching. They see his body hanging upside down from the tree. Once again, his body does not have a head. I also think that Christa used to be a cop or something before this whole August 8th incident. We still don't know what it is. She's just watching everyone's movements. She's trying to decipher their faces and their body language. She's trying to remember where people were at certain times, what the window could have been, who could have done it, all of that. So I think she used to be a cop with how much she's looking into everybody like that. And then her and Alexis decide to kind of team up and figure out who is doing this. And so now there will be 2 people who are watching. Alright, so with Christa and Alexis now working together, Christa tells Alexis about the axe and they decide to bring it into the cabin where more eyes can be on it. Someone can't just sneak off and go and grab it. When they bring it in, Simone is pissed that they decide to bring an axe into the cabin with a bunch of scared people. So Simone decides to take everybody's weapons from them, even the small little switchblades, and put them in the closet. Everyone is not okay with it, but also Simone has such an authoritarian voice and presence about her that no one really questions her. Christa is trying to figure out who to trust, with Grayson's being the determining factor because it had such a short time window. It was a 2-hour one. And so just from the time frame alone, she determines that Alexis and Steve are probably the most innocent. Her and Simone take the first shift of the night, and during the nighttime, she thinks about August 8th. And it happened about 2 years ago, and we find out she was actually a call center employee working like a very late shift. She got off at that time and was driving home. While crossing a bridge, or about to cross a bridge, a young car was driving recklessly behind Christa. She was getting really annoyed. They had tried to overtake her, even though there wasn't like a passing lane. I think it was just like one lane on each side, and they had tried to overtake her. Christa was not having it, so she sped up. And truck came in the opposite way. Christa realized that she made a mistake, so she braked. However, the driver that was trying to overtake her also braked. Eventually, somehow, he got over into the lane, but he went over the guardrail and went into the river or lake. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he went into the water and he died. So Christa feels responsible for stealing a young boy's life. When she looked over at him before he had went over, she had expected a really like young and reckless driver, like just gleeful, having the time of his life, but instead she saw a young redheaded boy crying, obviously crying, distressed, not having a good time. When the car went over and landed in the river, she stopped. The truck driver stopped. Truck driver didn't do anything to try to help. Christa was basically catatonic at this point. Another civilian had stopped and had tried to crawl down to help, but he stopped pretty quickly, realizing that there wasn't really anything that he could do. Alexis then, it's still nighttime, but Alexis crawls over to Christa and confides in her that she knew that there was a murder on this trip. She states that her sister had unalived herself, and while the cops had deemed it self-unaliving, she was not sure. She was not convinced, and started a blog, got more people interested in it. The cops took another look, took back, deemed it a murder. And then she gets a letter saying, "You're right, I killed your sister, come on this trip, let's meet," kind of thing. But Alexis didn't think that her decision to come on this trip, she thought she was only putting her own life at risk. She didn't realize that other people would die besides her. Alexis has a theory about who it is, but she goes back. They get interrupted and she goes back. Christa asks for a name, something. Instead of a name, she gives a clue, which is surgeon. So because of that, Christa thinks that it's Blake, because Blake is the one who recommended that they amputate her hand when she first came in because of the frostbite. Their lamps that they have throughout the cabin all go out. Everyone freaks out. Someone tries for Christa, tries to choke, suffocate her, hand over mouth. She bites them. They go for someone else. Hell breaks loose. They run outside. It's mass chaos. We see Alexis, and she's severely hurt, throat slashed. She's still alive, miraculously, but it's bad. So Simone, and I think it's Hutch, try to help her and save her, but again, it's bad. I don't know if she'll survive. Blake states that she had never left the cabin. She had stayed in the whole time while everyone else was running around. But everyone was running around, so Christa doesn't fully believe her. And then they see that the closet where all the weapons were is open because Simone also left. While her watch, she was leaning against the closet door. So the closet door now open and the axe is gone. So the group splits off. Denny, Christa, and Steve all go to the generator. They had put fuel in it and it should have lasted throughout the night, but it didn't. So they go to see what was up. While Simone and Hutch work on Alexis, and then Blake is useless because she's all angry because no one cares about her. Oh, she's so annoying. I do not like her. Anyway, so Christa's group then goes to the shed to look for candles, more fuel, anything that would work, and they find 2 mangled bodies. Presumably the cabin's owners. Christa thinks that they maybe stumbled upon a murder, and now the murderer is just killing off witnesses. How they missed these bodies the first time around, because they've already looked through the shed several times. And yes, the bodies were under a tarp, but still. How do you miss that? Anyway, I don't know if this is just, the writer like not thinking, or maybe the shed is bigger than what I'm thinking in my brain. But yeah, or the characters are just stupid, which could very well be. And that's always super annoying when the characters are stupid. We find out that Hutch had recorded all the chaos that went down. And it seems that Blake was the one who went for Christa. She doesn't really say anything, but looking worse and worse for Blake. They're looking for like a charger, like a portable charger or something, because Hutch's phone dies before they're able to like compare heights, because one of the last things they see is Alexis off in the distance with another like body, and they were going to compare the heights and see how it was, see who's the most likely suspects. But phone dies. So Simone, Denny, and Blake now go back to the shed, try to find more fuel, anything really, because candles just aren't enough. And Blake is only going because she wants to see the bodies. Again, problem and creepy. So I don't like her. Anyway, the rest look through all the luggage, try to find a portable charging device for the phone. Christa gives up pretty easily, and then she goes through Alexis's notebook that she's been scribbling in the entire time. And she realizes that Alexis was tracking everyone's movements. She uses code, but Christa is able to figure out the code pretty easily. Like, Kieran has an Irish last name, so she used a little, like, clover for him. For Christa, it's like a cross, because Christa, Christian. Trying to remember everyone's code. I can't remember. Blake is like a stick because she always is wearing lipstick. Simone is, I think, a horse because she wears her hair in a ponytail. I think Steve is like a fish because he really wanted to go fishing. I can't remember everybody's, but it was like little clues. So they were pretty easy to figure out, but it was where if somebody looked at it, just glanced at it, they wouldn't be able to tell right away what was going on. Simone comes back in and they find a tiny bit of fuel and a cell phone booster. So now they have a plan. All right, so the plan involves Christa being on top of the cabin and holding up the antenna so that they have the best chance that they can get for the cell phone booster to work, and they give out a call using Christa's cell phone to try to get somebody to come out there. It's like there for a minute, not even a minute, like a really short amount of time. When they come back down, they realize in the chaos of them realizing that the signal had gone out, but not for long enough, Hutch's phone is broken because they were also charging his phone. But his phone is broken and now is not usable. Christa, while on top of the cabin, she thinks that she saw the lodge and knows how to get there. And is like, we can walk there. It's not that far. It's half a day at most. They then ask Blake if the call, because the call went through, but not for very long. So they then ask Blake what's protocol, like if someone's going to come. She states that protocol says that someone needs to check it out, but she herself, as a 911 dispatcher, would not have sent anyone to that call. She did that kind of shit a lot and had no remorse, none. And her only thing was it cost one boy his life. On August 8th, a boy had called and saying that he had fallen into like a ravine, a lake, river, whatever. And he couldn't get out. And she hung up on him. This woman hung up on the boy that has been torturing Christa for the past 2 years and literally had like no remorse. Like, oh yeah, he died. It's too bad. I was forced into early retirement because of this scenario. Girl. Oh my God. But they're all connected to this boy. Every single one of them. Steve was the truck driver on the other side. Miri was with him at the time. We all know Chris's involvement. Hutch was the civilian that tried to make his way down. Blake is obviously the 911 dispatcher that hung up on him. Simone is the one who, it was part of the team that pulled the car out of the river. Grayson, I think, is just being guilty of being Denny's son because Denny was in charge of the fleet of trucks that Steve drove, and the emergency brake had failed, which is why Steve couldn't stop earlier. Miri was probably just product of being Steve's wife, and then Brian, just casualty, innocent casualty. But they're all connected to him. And I bet Alexis's sister, the one who it was made to look like self-unaliving, I bet she was the girlfriend that this boy was fighting with, who caused him to drive all sporadically. And the boy had red hair. This is going to be such a stereotype, but I'm going with what I have. The boy had red hair, and Kieran has an Irish last name. And so I still believe it's Kieran. I have no reason to believe that. We saw his teeth, we saw his body, and there's too much that happens inside the cabin. Like, Hutch's phone died, the axe got stolen, or Hutch's phone got broken, the axe got stolen. But I still think in Kieran. I know it can't be because of what happens inside the cabin, and Kieran can't just like pop in and be like, hi, I'm alive, smash, bye. But, anyhow, continuing on. Alexis's journal is missing. Christa doesn't raise too much of a concern, but she does look around and sees who might have been the one to steal it. Middle of the night, everyone's still kind of watching, but not really like, anyway. Steve gets up, uses the restroom. Simone follows. And then she hears Steve scream, runs outside. Denny and Hutch are not far behind her. Simone just unalived Steve with like a rock. And it was violent and gruesome. Denny and Hutch get her to the ground. They tie her up, put her in the shed. Christa tries to go to her for answers about why Kieran, like blah, 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 all of that. But, yeah. Simone was not one that I really suspected at all. So that was really surprising. She just like smashed his face in. It was wild. While Christa was questioning Simone, Simone states that walking to the lodge is a good idea and she should do it. Christa's not convinced that Simone is the butcher. Like, they've been in really close contact and close quarters for a couple days now. She just doesn't buy it. So she decides to read Alexis's journal from like start to finish. And Alexis had suspected Steve, actually. So Simone had read it and decided to unalive Steve. Probably try to protect everybody else. The fear, the anger, everything about the last couple of days, she broke, basically, and unalived him. And she didn't try to, like, say that she was innocent or that Steve was the butcher, probably because she's ex-military, has a code, and she killed somebody. She probably doesn't believe that she is innocent. So Christa wants to go to Simone and talk to her about it and see if she had more than just Alexis's journal to go off of before she unalived Steve. She goes to the shed, and Simone is dead. Her head no longer there. The butcher then comes to the shed, and so Christa hides, thankfully successfully, but she hides. And then she runs back to the cabin. It's been so long since she's been gone. So she runs back to the cabin, and she sees that Hutch is, like, bleeding out. Blake is gone. Hutch tells her to run. Denny comes in with an axe. So Christa runs. Hutch, like, stops Denny, like, grabs his pant leg while he's bleeding. And also Alexis is still there. She's still alive, but, like, fading. So Christa runs. Denny chases after her with the axe. They go through the snow. She finds Blake's body and then the head, and it's like the body is pointing to the lodge. And so she runs. She makes it into the lodge, locks the doors, and is like trying to find a floor plan now. But Denny is using the axe to try to get in. During the run, she thinks about just the fact that it was Denny the whole time and that Grayson was right. She doesn't remember the last name of the boy that was killed. His first name was Liam. She's like, okay, so Denny's son had died. The wife had probably stepped out on him. And then he took Grayson up here to see if he'd be okay with all the blood and the, like, killing. And when he wasn't, Grayson was a casualty. All right, so she's able to find the floor pan, and she turns on the generator. All the power's on. She realizes that she's been bleeding this whole time, leading Denny straight to her. So she runs around, stops bleeding, at least bleeding on the floor. Runs around, Denny's on her tail. She goes upstairs. She finds that she has a signal. And so she calls 911, but she has almost no battery left, so she can't stay on for very long, unfortunately. She's running around the floor. Denny almost catches up to her a couple of times. She goes out the fire escape and then back down, worried that Denny's going to realize where she's been. And then she hears thumping down the stairs. And she looks over, and it's Denny's head. And then Kieran walks down the stairs. I knew it! I apologize. I knew it. I knew the whole time. I trusted. My not trusting of anything made me right. And I felt very proud in that moment. At first, Christa is just ecstatic that he's alive. She thought him dead for so long, and he's not. He's alive. He saved her. But then she realizes, wait, that doesn't track. I found your clothes on a body. He explains that Denny had assumed Christa was the killer because she was crouched over Hutch's body while he was bleeding. Christa realizes Hutch wasn't trying to stop Denny from coming after her, but to explain that it wasn't them. It wasn't either of them. He was trying to help them both in his last moments, because I assume he's just not alive anymore. Kiernan also explains everyone's connection to his brother, who had died that night on August 8th, and how he was going one by one, making it look like self-unalivings, and it was going really well until, of course, Alexis and her sister. Also, we find out that he was actually the one responsible for Denny's wife's death because he was the one who tampered with the brakes, but as luck or unluck would have it, that was the one day that Denny decided not to drive the car. There was some luck and a lot of planning that went into all of this because he decided just to get a lot of them out of the way all at once. And so everyone got their tickets to come up to the lodge free, basically, which we had found out earlier. Blake had been gifted it, assumed it was for her retirement. Steve and Miri had won it. Hutch, it was scouting for a location. Denny and Grayson had got it in the mail or something. Kiernan talking now, he states that he knew that Christa never would have accepted something like that. So he had to get in her life. And he saw every day how affected she was by his brother's death. She refused to drive at night. She had nightmares for such a long time. And while he appreciated the fact that she was affected by it, he was determined with his plan. And he was determined he was going to be the perfect boyfriend for while he was seeing her. And he was, which is why she decided even to come out for this in the first place. He wanted revenge, and he was going to get it. He was going to get revenge not just for his brother, but his whole family. His brother died. 6 months later, his father unalives himself. And then the mom's just not in any, right mind to take care of herself. She's in a home right now, just basically catatonic the entire time. She lost one of her sons and her husband in less than a year in such gruesome ways. And so he was going to get revenge for them. He had promised them revenge, and he was going to get it. But he had never planned this far ahead. He knew very likely that he could have died. The killings were so up close and personal that it's very possible someone could have fought back and Kiernan could have been the one dead. So he didn't really plan for this scenario with Christa. And he kind of liked her, so he told Christa to beg. If she begs for her life, he'll let her live. So she begs, but she has Alexis's little switchblade, and when he leans in for a kiss, which so weird, but she stabs him in the chest. Should have gone for the neck. You always go for the neck in this situation. But she stabs him in the chest. He pushes her away. They struggle. She shoves her now dead black fingers down his throat, which but does that, grabs the knife. I think he had already thrown the knife on the ground, so she grabs the knife, now goes for the neck. Helicopters now come to save the day. Kiernan's bleeding out. We don't know the status of Hutch and Alexis back at the cabin. And that, my friends, is how the story ends. So there's still a lot of questions. At least I have a lot of questions. So initially, because Christa had asked Kiernan how he made the snowstorm happen and all of that, and how he got them to be in the cabin. Initially, he said that his plan was for him to be in the cabin and them to be in the lodge. But the lodge had cell service, it had a generator, so I really wanted to know what his plan was, to stay in the lodge and hide out from them. So that part seemed a little weird for me. And also it would have been far harder to get everybody if they were in the lodge. Especially up close and personal, kind of how he wanted to. So that's probably my biggest question. Obviously I want to know if Alexis is alive and Hutch as well. Hutch I assume is just not alive anymore. But I'm really curious about Alexis. She was fading. Is the helicopter going to get there in time? So a lot of questions. But I also really do like when horror books leave you with questions. It's not wrapped in a neat little bow because the book wasn't a neat little bow. Like, it was scary, and it was like, this one wasn't horribly scary, but like, you have questions the entire time, and I like that it still leaves you with questions. Everything being answered, I feel like it's just not quite as fun as trying to figure it out yourself. So, what do you guys think? Do you think Alexis and Hutch are alive? Were you with me? Did you think I was Kiernan the whole time, or were you think I was totally off base? Also, even though I did guess right away, not right away, but like, as soon as we saw Kiernan's body and no head, and then Brian's head with no body, I guessed, and I wasn't even entirely sure. She did a very good job about making me like second guess myself and going back, but being like, no, it can't be. And all the stuff that had happened in the cabin that I thought was tampering and sabotage ended up just being scared people. It was a very good book. While I did guess who it was, I really, really enjoyed it. And I liked that you don't trust anything and that you keep guessing. You think it's Steve, it's Blake, it's Denny. But no, it was the dead boy all along. So tell me what you guys thought in the comments. If you liked it, give me a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!